All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Reinvest New Ulm Committee meeting, our April 26th meeting. First, I just wanted to do a round of thank yous. Thank you to our committee. For those in the audience that may not know this, we've been meeting since September. So the time commitment and energy that our committee has been putting in, I want to recognize and thank you for, again, great attendance tonight and your engagement in helping support our RENU committee efforts. Second, also appreciation to city leadership in addition to kind of day-to-day operations. This is obviously creating more work and needs from city leadership, so I want to thank them, and to the turnout here from the public on the proposals. Thank you. It's great to see such a strong turnout, people that care about the community, the future of the community, future of our region, and it's great to have everyone come together with all kinds of ideas of how we can make New Ulm and this region even better than it is today. We'll call the meeting to order, and the first order of business is approval of the meeting minutes from our April 19th, which was just last Tuesday. Those are sent out in our packet and would look for any comments or recommendations on changes to those minutes. If not, would seek an approval.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and second to approve the meeting minutes from April 19th. Any more discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Also wanted to update the committee, and one member, Kathleen Sullivan, is not here. She's absent tonight, but otherwise we have the full committee. Before this evening's meeting, Herb Shopper, who was here last week representing Johnson Park and was one of the members that spoke, dropped off a booklet on Johnson Park and the history of Johnson Park. So everyone should have received a copy of that. Happy reading, good bedtime reading for you tonight. So, history of Johnson Park. Our rest of the agenda tonight, we were really going to focus on two more proposals. Again, we had 13 proposals, and we've split these up in the calendar. And we have this evening State Street Theater and Turner Hall, along with Newega. This evening, and then next week, Tuesday, city engineering projects, and 5 proposals will come forward from the city engineer's office. And then again, we haven't scheduled a meeting for May 10th. We can discuss that later if needed. And on May 17th, we'll come back together, and we have invited the city financial advisor to join us and help us better understand kind of some of the financial projections for the city related to bonding capacity for the sales tax, as well as the general fund, bond rating, other things that could help inform us on the best financial decision-making possible. I think the last couple weeks have worked really well, so hopefully those that haven't attended were able to at least read the newspaper or maybe watch online. What we've done is we've split it up to invite the proposers to take about 10 to 15 minutes to provide a formal overview of the project proposal. All of our committee has been able to review those formal written proposals, but we'd like to kind of have a high-level overview of each proposal, and then we'll have time for question and answers with the committee here, and we'll roughly allocate about 15 or 20 minutes for that, and then turn it over to anyone in the audience. And any of you that would like to step up to the microphone and podium, what we would ask is you would announce your name and your address for the public record, and then maybe share, if you could limit those, so we have a great showing here. Maybe think about limiting that to a minute or so we can make sure we can hear from as many people as possible. And if you're hearing similar themes, maybe try to think of if there's something else you want to add that somebody hasn't shared yet. Would like to do our best to hear as much feedback from our community as possible tonight. So that, and then we'll do that for State Street Theater, and then we'll start all over and do that again for Turner Hall and Newega. Okay, so that's the plan for this evening. Sound good, committee? All right, well, why don't we get started, and would ask Reed Glaive, the president of State Street Theater Company, if you could help us with an overview of the State Street Theater proposal.
Yes, I'd be happy to. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you tonight State Street Theater Company's proposal. I'm going to try to stick with 10 minutes. If I start going over that, somebody point at me or raise your hand or something, please, because I know there's probably a lot of people that have questions and want to make comments. If you've been reading the papers or kind of paying attention, you probably know there's been a lot of kind of things going on with State Street Theater lately. I know there's a lot of issues or things that aren't necessarily directly related to the RENU project, and be happy to talk about those, but for the next 10 minutes, I really want to try to focus on what the proposal is and try to at least provide that overview and go through with you kind of what our position on our thoughts are as far as the matrix and how we think that maybe is a worthy project and how it might rank on that. So what I'd like to do first is because this proposal has maybe more moving parts than what some of the other ones have. So I'd like to kind of talk about both of those because there's kind of two parts to this. One part involves a proposal that we made last week to the City Council asking the city to consider taking title to the State Street Theater. And then there's, of course, this part of it, the second part, which is our proposal to the RENU. And both of them kind of go together. They're kind of dependent on each other in some respects. So let me talk, just because I know there's some confusion. I've heard comments out there about how we're now asking the city to pay for renovations of the entire complex up there, not just the theater. So I want to try to walk through that again and hopefully clarify, if I didn't last week, if I wasn't very clear, try to clarify exactly what it is we're proposing. So with respect to the city taking title, what we proposed was we've asked the city to consider taking title to the property in the building of State Street Theater Company. That's known as Lot 2. As part of that, we've asked the city to consider providing some of the carrying costs for the property. That would entail things like providing insurance, helping or taking care of the utilities on the property, providing some level of maintenance as there's performances or productions out there to help us maintain the property, and asking the city to provide some maintenance, some basic maintenance and upkeep of the facility. Now, I then went on to say, and perhaps I was not very clear because I generated some ire, I think, and maybe deservedly so, that State Street Theater would run the place, okay? Well, you can read a lot into that, and so I need to clarify that. Our whole approach, as I indicated last week, our whole approach with the city taking title is a long-term perspective, all right? When we started looking at this, and we've been working on this for quite some time, but we asked ourselves the questions, how can we try to guarantee that facility, if you believe it's a community asset, all right? We'll talk about that in a little bit. But if you believe it's a community asset and it's worth saving, both from its historical standpoint and from the services that it provides to the community, it's worth saving. How can we try to make sure that it'll be around in 50 years, okay? People come and go. Most of us in this room may not be around in 50 years. So how do you try to guarantee that? And, you know, I'm not going to be here. People who are currently involved in the theater and have a love for it may not be here, but I'm pretty sure the city's going to be here. Okay, so part of that's part of the reason that we asked the city to consider taking title to it. But we're not intending on running it. We would run it. Our approach was to try to minimize costs to the city. How can we make this as minimally expensive to the city without dumping it on the city? So how can we try to do that? So our thought is, well, we have a community group that's pretty good at doing productions. We're learning how to run and own a theater. And so rather than the city having to hire staff, you know, let us help out with that. So that was only our intent. Our first chance to present to the city was last week, so we really didn't have an opportunity to have a conversation with city staff or with the council about what might that relationship look like. And we're open to any suggestions. But we think there's examples around town that might fit that situation with a similar, you know, relationship between the city and with State Street Theater in trying to keep the lights on and that facility operating as a performing arts center. So then there's the RENU side of it, and you know, we've presented our letter of intent, and we've asked RENU to help include funding or approve funding for the first phase of what are 3 phases of proposed renovation. But actually, when it comes to that theater, I think there's a bigger part of this that I want to emphasize to the committee that to me is critical for being included in RENU. And as you know, under the current bonding arrangement, the Civic Center and the Community Center, there's a capital reserve account that's kind of growing or is building up for, as Tom Schmitz call it, the big things. New roof, or siding or repair of exterior things, or HVAC, new furnace, things like that, the expensive things. What I really would like to do, if we can do that with State Street Theater, is, and I think this is prioritized, I think this is the top of the list, is try to include that in RENU. And according to City Council, there is a way to do this through the legislation to set it up so that we can, through the half-cent sales tax revenues, start building up a capital reserve so that down the road, when the building needs a new roof, we've got funds to do that. When it needs tuck pointing, we've got funds to do that. Needs a new furnace or HVAC. To me, one of the important reasons for doing that is because it doesn't create a burden on the city and the general budget of the city to have to fix those things. It's self-funded, if you will, in that respect. I don't mean to minimize the renovation part of it, but to me that's a pretty big part of it is that capital reserve. So let's talk very quickly then about the matrix and kind of work through what some of the criteria is that the committee is looking at and trying to evaluate this project anyway. Community safety, that's probably not the strongest point, but some of the renovations that we're talking about, inclusion of an elevator, updated modern seating, accessibility, I think those do have an element of safety to them, so I think that contributes to safety. One place that I think it really shines is in the diverse community benefit area, which is, does the proposal benefit community members of all ages, race, social economic status, et cetera. And if any of you have seen performances at the State Street Theater or are familiar with it, I mean, we've got people of all ages involved in that production. Kids are doing children's theater. They're involved in our large productions. We have people of all ages really are actively involved in that. And it's not just from this community. It's from other communities as well that come here. Mankato, Madelia, Sleepy Eye, Redwood Falls. We've had, over the last 10 years, between actors, performers, and stage help, we've had over 700 people that have been involved in productions up in the State Street Theater. So that's, I think that is somewhat demonstrative of the impact that it has on the community, but also upon the surrounding area as far as providing diversity. And all the other projects you've got in front of you, other than the city projects for the armory and those type of things, are, they tend more towards the physical, athletic, physical activity type of things. But we think that it's also important to have, the theater, the performing arts as part of that mix, because we think it enhances New Ulm, it adds to the diversity of it, and we think it makes it more attractive. Diverse community interest, which isn't so much diversity, but as I understand it, whether the interest is high among the community, the interest in this type of project. I think, it's probably true that more people probably use the athletic facilities in this community than probably the theater. But that's not to say that I think the theater doesn't play an important role or have an important part in the city of New Ulm. The first performing arts, the first play, if you will, ever in the city of New Ulm was back in 1858. I think the town became a city, or became a town in 1854. It was on the Turner stage. And that's documented. You can go through the history of New Ulm, and every decade there's reports of performing arts in this town. If you stack the two up next to each other, physical activities or those type of facilities, facilities and the arts, performing arts, we've been around a lot longer in New Ulm. So New Ulm actually has a really rich history of performing arts. It was the only time I think that there was kind of a lull was in the Depression, right before the State Street Theater was built. So I think in that respect, there's a strong heritage of performing arts, and it's been supported strongly by the public in the city of New Ulm, and I hope we can continue to do that. Regional benefit. Actually, before I do that, let's talk quickly about the plans. Online, there's a picture of the interior seating and the murals in the theater. Some floor plans, you probably won't be able to see these very well, but some of the phase one renovations that we've talked about include such things as new seating. These are some of the sketches that were provided, kind of just mock-ups that were provided by the architects and engineers. One of the firms specializes in theaters out of the cities. And so we're looking at new seating, restoration of the restrooms, handicap accessible restrooms, an elevator, a catering kitchen, a orchestra pit for the theater, and restoration of the murals. All three murals are included in that. So we have larger placards here, and anybody who's interested certainly can walk up and take a look at them. Let's get back to the regional benefits. So, we believe that we're a pretty good draw to the city of New Ulm. In your packets, online, people, if they want to check online, we've also included them on the PowerPoint here. You can see, excuse me, sorry about that. You can see some statistical information that we were able to gather from one of our performances. This one was from Fiddler on the Roof, 2014. It's one of our large summer musical. You can see out of that, and there was about 1,000 people that attended that. So about 61 of those were from New Ulm. So about roughly 39% were from outside New Ulm and from other counties, and we kind of listed those there. More recently, this last Valentine's Day dinner theater, that was a dinner theater that was done in the theater on the stage, musical. So this is kind of the mix of people who were there, and that was about 90 people per night that attended that. So you can see we had about 29% from New Ulm, but we had 22% from Sibley, Greater Brown County, 20%, Blue Earth County, 15%. I believe we even had somebody from Ireland was attending one of those shows. And then this is, we do really good promotion. So on Saturday, the next night, you'll see, again, similar 34% for New Ulm, and then many people coming into town from outside New Ulm, from the surrounding area and surrounding counties. So that's just an example of the draw that we have from surrounding areas. So I think it's good in that respect. And that's not to mention that when you do a production, there's actors that are rehearsing for that. They're rehearsing for a month, 2 months before that. That's oftentimes every night of the week, during the work week. They're coming into town and they're rehearsing. They're in town to do that. So that's a draw every night for a couple months, where you have people coming into town to rehearse and prepare for a production. Economic development growth, excuse me. Well, as the statistics show, we think it's a draw to the community. People from out of town are coming in to watch performances and productions. We think it adds diversity to the community. Right now the community has a lot of sports facilities. We think this adds a nice touch of diversity to it. When you have that and you have people coming into the community to enjoy that venue, it makes the community more attractive. It's more dynamic. People, when they're coming to town looking to settle in New Ulm, these are the type of things that they look for and they appreciate. I'm an example of that. And not only that, but then employers also, because if they're considering relocating here, they're also looking at what type of community am I moving my employees to, or would want to live in a town like this. So we think it adds a positive effect in that respect. Low ongoing subsidization. We've talked already about the proposal to the city and having the city hopefully pick up the utilities, some of those expenses. Our proposal entails State Street Theater covering the expenses of operation, a manager, costs of performances, any productions that come in from out of town, those type of things would not be a burden on the city. As we can get it renovated, we think that's going to create an opportunity to have more events and different types of events there. That will generate more income, which will also help offset expenses of the city and cover overhead from operations. So we think it has a positive economic effect, not only from operations, but it also brings people into the city, and that's helpful. Just to wrap things up, alternate funding not available. I know this is often asked at the prior meetings, and if we're going to be honest about this, every one of the proposals that come in front of the committee have alternate funding, okay? Take the city, for example. Whether it's the park and rec or the purchase of real estate, things like that, the city has a mechanism for funding those projects through the direct tax levy. Now, whether the community would support that or whether there's the political will in the city council to do that is another question. But that avenue is available. Turner Hall, for example, they recently added an addition onto the back, very nice addition with the elevator and all that. They raised that capital through a capital campaign to pay for that, all right? So yes. So the answer for our project is yes, there are alternative funding, but until you have it in hand, you don't know if you have anything. A couple of sources that we have, one is a capital campaign, which we intend to do because we're only asking for phase 1 of a 3-phase renovation project. There are some historic grants that we intend to apply for that can be used, are available, and can be used to renovate existing things. That's not going to pay for the orchestra pit, for example. But it can be used for renovating existing things. So we're going to try to make use of that. If we were included in RENU and we got funding, and then we were to get a grant for something that's already covered by RENU, I'm not sure we would handle that. My preference would be, okay, we've got a grant now, so we can cover something that was authorized in RENU. Can we use some of the RENU money to then cover phase 2 or the beginning of phase 2 type of things? I don't know. Or does it have to go back and be paid down on the bond? I'm not sure of that question. Finally, expand social well-being. I think, again, this adds to the diversity of the community. I think having a theater, particularly getting young children involved in it, it keeps them active. It develops their mind. It makes them good citizens. I think having that theater in town is, with all of its historical significance, I think adds a positive effect to the community more than what it takes away. So with that, if there's any questions. Oh, one last thing, I'm sorry. We included in the slideshow a list of the users of the theater over the last 12 months. So we wanted you to, this kind of goes with who's using it, where are they coming from. So you'll see various performances, New Ulm Community Concerts, 800 people there. Castle Learning Bookend Series, film festivals, Ian Kimmel and the Herd, Revolution 5, the Beatles tribute, that was a wonderful show. Comedy, the Haunted School. These are just some of the American Bandstand tribute band. I'm sorry, with that, I'm open to questions.
Okay. Thank you for the overview, and turn it over to the committee now for questions for Mr. Glave.
Well, I'll start off. One of the confusions for me is there seems to be a lot of details that need to be worked out, legal issues for the city to be involved to take ownership. And we got our packet from you in October.
Mm-hmm.
To my knowledge, no one has even worked with the city to even start that process. And we're working here at a timeline where we're trying to get this accomplished so we can get it to the council and get it on the ballot this fall.
Right.
I see us in a real danger zone that we could jeopardize all projects in order to work out the details legal details to pull this off? Help
Couple,
me.
couple things on that. You maybe weren't aware of this, but actually before we started working on the letter of intent for this committee, we had already prepared a proposal, a complete proposal that entails most of what I presented tonight, and provided that to members of the city council, all right, informally. So they were aware we were thinking of it. There was some informal discussions, but nothing with city staff or anything like that because they didn't have anything formal to work with, all right? I mean, they didn't have any instructions from the city council or anything like that. But the city council certainly, was aware of the direction that we were heading, and we tried to provide some budgetary information and things like that. So it's not a complete surprise to them. But the timing of this, we may have waited longer than what we should have, and I think I'm maybe partly to, or maybe I'm fully responsible for that. It was suggested to us that that if we could get RENU approval, this is kind of a cart and the horse type of thing. If we could get RENU approval, that would likely improve our chances of getting city council to agree to take title to it, okay? So we've kind of been shepherding this along and trying to get this in front of RENU and that. Then, of course, we had the letter from the city council that says, RENU, you can't approve a project that's not owned by the city. And so that kind of brought it to a head for us and forced us to bring it in front of the city council. But you're right. I mean, we're under kind of a short timeline. Now, I know over this next month, you've got one more meeting where there's still projects to be presented, and then you're going to maybe have a couple more meetings after that. So I think we've got time to work out some details in working with the city staff, with city council, to try to address those legal issues. And
To my
drag it-
knowledge, last Tuesday was the first
That's the first formal presentation.
first formal meeting to the council, so
That's absolutely correct.
is there some legalities that's already in motion that could now be brought to the council, or are they have to still at ground zero?
We have not met with, I'll answer that, I'll answer that. We're still at the early stages, yes. I think Brian had recommended at one of the earlier meetings of this committee that, one way, because there were complications, I think, in reference to our project, and Brian had suggested, well, you might have to think of alternatives, too. If, for example, our project ended up being in the top 3 projects, ranking-wise, then I think Brian's suggestion probably has some merit. I mean, we are going to meet with city council. We are going to try to get those legal answers addressed in a short fashion. But I think you have to have alternatives. Okay, I think you need to leave your options open. And hopefully that won't put you into a box where you can't make some final decisions.
Okay.
Does that help?
Thank you. Other questions?
What about the ADA things you're going to be doing? Is it going to go all the way up to the balcony? Is it going to go all the way down in the basement? What kind of a work are you intending with the elevators, the bathrooms,
we wouldn't
and
have
stuff like that?
We wouldn't have an ADA accessible to the balcony, but to all the other floors, it would be down to the basement. Would be to that little gymnasium level that would be in there, and then of course the first floor. So the balcony would introduce some, I think, engineering design problems that would make that part difficult. But certainly there would be, there's ADA access to the first floor of the auditorium now. But, for example, we've got that off-Broadway studio, which is a performing arts room where we've done some small productions. There's no ADA access to that right now. So that's something that with an elevator we'd be able to get that.
Can you touch base a little bit on the building plans, Reed? As far as the building plans, is everything on the theater property or is it on the developer's side? Because kind of looking at the blueprint here.
All of phase 1 is on the State Street Theater side, including stage 2. In stage 3, which are some of the kind of the more larger priced items, there is some rough designs or thoughts for the small gym, okay, as a black box performance. Now, that's not owned by State Street Theater, but it is subject to a 99-year lease in favor of State Street Theater.
Now, you've got a catering kitchen. Is there gonna be a dining hall somewhere that I see here in your plans?
It would, no, the catering kitchen would be for like dinner theater type of performances, where the tables and chairs and the dining would be on what is now the stage. You can call it the basketball court, certainly painted as such. But it would be there, and then the performances would be towards the front of the stage, but they would be doing it in reverse. They would be performing to the back of the theater. But the catering kitchen would be so that we're in compliance with, you know, for food preparation and production, and so that we can have more options. I think it also would allow for wedding receptions, you know, other things where food type of events are involved.
Now, you've got stated here a loading dock, so you're familiar with your developer is planning on building a parking garage in the rear, so.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
This is all
Yep,
gonna be.
and that was addressed in the Declaration of Covenants, okay? Where the developer was gonna need some additional parking spaces on our side of the property. That is addressed in there, but also they have to stay away from certain portions of the west side of that building so that a loading dock could be installed, so that things could be loaded on and, you know, loaded in and taken out, particularly with respect to productions that come into town from outside of town, so that they can easily, you know, unload their equipment and things like that.
Yeah, like I say, I'm just looking at the plans a little bit, and that's why I was just curious with the elevator and stuff like that.
I don't know if you had a chance to see Chitty Chitty Bang Bang this last summer, but that took like 4 guys to get it into door 7 that goes into the gym, and you had to, I mean, we literally had about that much space to try to get that thing crammed in there. We could have avoided all that with a loading dock, but.
Okay. Other questions?
Yeah, I guess what is the alternative? Will there still be a theater in town if this doesn't go through, or does the building, is it vacant, or does it just deteriorate if nothing?
That's a good question. So what happens if, well, there's 2 parts of this, remember. There's the RENU, okay? So if RENU doesn't provide funding, and I think it's a worthy project for that, but if the RENU doesn't provide funding, we're certainly not gonna be able to try to build up that capital reserve. But we'll have to try to generate the funds from other resources. We'll have to try to go out to, you know, through capital campaign, you know, hopefully through some of those grants, and try to do that. You know, if the city doesn't take title to it, and you know, there's other examples of city theater relationships around Minnesota. You know, one is Worthington, one that is, I think, a positive example, where the city took title to a similar type of school building, had a theater in it. In that case, they tore down the rest of the property, kept the theater. City owns it, and there's a commission then appointed by the city to operate it. Okay, but in that case, the city provides actually some operating funding, which we don't really want to go that route, you know, because that's an additional burden on the city. But that actually works. An example of on the other end would be maybe Glenwood, where there's a theater that the city did not take title to. I haven't seen it personally, but I know people that are on my committee and on the task force who have, and they'll describe it as tired looking, okay? My concern is this, with respect to this facility. My concern is that if State Street Theater Company is responsible for owning and trying to keep that building up, I don't know where we're gonna get the money to replace the roof when the time comes. But I know a lot of our energies are gonna be devoted just to trying to keep the lights on, okay? If we don't have some help somewhere. And this is just me, I'm not speaking for anybody else now, but I mean, my concern is that it's going to suffer a slow and difficult death, is what that building's gonna suffer. And eventually, it's gonna be closed because it's no longer inhabitable, because the roof leaks or something's broke down that couldn't be afforded to fix. I'm concerned that when that happens, the murals are gonna leave. They might end up at the Brown County Historical Society, but I know there's places up in the cities that would love to have those things. So I'm concerned about that. So yeah, for me, I think there's a better chance of that scenario happening than it not happening if State Street Theater is left on its own to try to run the thing. That's my honest opinion.
I've got a few, and I'm sure there's more, but I've got a few questions around the dollars. So for stage one, which is what you're requesting funds for,
Right.
you're requesting $1,081,000 and some change.
That's right.
But I also heard you mention, this is a multiple part question, I also heard you mention that you would want some money to maintain and to further go on. Do you have an estimate of what your further expectations are that you would want as part of what we believe to be a $12 to $15 million sales tax?
That would not be part of the renewal. I mean, not in terms of like maintenance or
So the capital fund is what I'm talking about. You talked about
Oh.
how we had a reserve with the original sales tax. There's
You asked
funds
me
left
how
over.
much that would be.
How much would you need that to be? Because it's not really $1 million. Is it $1.5 million?
Well,
Is it $2 million? Is it?
I think a new roof for that facility is probably over $100,000. Okay, so we're probably talking $200,000 to $300,000 as reserve. That would be built up over time with, as I understand the way the current bond is operated, the city pays the minimum amount that's required for the bond payments. But half-cent sales tax revenues have been exceeding that, and exceeding it by quite a bit in recent years.
Mhm.
Part of that is due to the additional retailers that we have in town. That wasn't there before. So my thought of the way this would work would be not that there would be a separate amount of capital, fund that would be set aside up front, but my hope would be that if the city continues the same policy in terms of how it pays those bonds, that there would be excess sales tax revenues over time, that could help fund. But in order to use those monies to replace a roof or something like that, my understanding, it has to be written into the legislation. So it's not part of the upfront asking for, 1.5 million or 1.4 million. The upfront would still be the 1.1, but the hope would be is that if we had in the legislation, and if sales tax revenues exceeded what the installment payments are, that would be a source of capital that we could be used to replace a roof down the road or HVAC or things like that.
Okay. So my next monetary question is around, do you know what you currently pay in property taxes for the State Street Theater as it stands today?
As part of the transfer from, it's like 1,300, is it? As part of the transfer from the district to Senate and then from Senate to State Street Theater, there was a year in there that we had to pay real estate taxes, and I want to say it's roughly $2,300, I believe. 2,500. There you go, 2,500. I believe, and we had applied for an exemption or exclusion or whatever from the county because of the nonprofit aspect of the business or the operations, and we were awarded that. So moving forward, we shouldn't have real estate tax owed for that complex.
Okay. And then lastly, within your budget, as you look moving forward from an operations standpoint, with the city potentially owning this facility, paying $40,000 into overhead to upkeep it, do you have expectations of paying rent back to the city or free of charge?
See, and I think that's open for discussion. I think the city's got to be compensated to the extent we can from operation revenues for their expenses and their input into that. That might take the form of a lease. It might take the form of a percentage of, I think there's some examples now where the city gets a percent of operations from, operations of its facilities by cast, I think it might. I can't remember which one it is, but we need to figure that out. But the bottom line is, yes, I think revenues, and the sooner we can get those renovations done, I think the more events we can have in there, the more diversity of type of things, the more different types of rentals we can have, that'll be able to generate more revenues for the city and to help cover our overhead.
Okay, thank you.
Say, Reed, you've got the diagrams here from INS. Is it possible that you could walk through some of these diagrams for the public and kind of get a little input on it?
I'm probably not the best person to do that, but.
You know, just to kind of help better explain them, or if you want to bring them up, or
Set
I don't
them
know
up
if you
on
have
the table.
you know, so we kind of know what we're,
Well, this might be the best.
you know, we've got some little ones, but
Okay,
maybe we can get a picture of that for the audience, or for the,
Turn them towards the audience so they get an idea. We can work off the little ones if we have.
yeah, we can, you know, just so the public knows what we're,
So the public knows
we're
what
looking
we're
at.
talking about.
Otherwise, they're just,
This is a good one.
you know,
Okay, now the renovations involve, all levels. There's a basement in that, that facility, so we're talking dressing rooms, off-Broadway studio, there's gonna be storage areas, there's gonna be an elevator that's just for props, or a set elevator, if you will. So, as we're looking at this, so this is the seating in the auditorium, this is the lobby area out here. This is the stage and the backstage area.
excuse me, Reed, maybe we could turn it around so it's on the TV, so then everybody can catch it on TV. If we can get that. I think you need to go another,
We got a camera up here.
oh, there you go.
Okay.
That way we can get the public in on it, and
All right. So one of the proposals, one of the largest ticket items in the phase one, funding is for new seating. So that's currently roughly a 900 seat auditorium with the new seating and the more comfortable seating. It'll be roughly.
Yeah, that TV's off and that TV's
Oh.
so the only thing we see it on is
we
this.
see it there, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
Do whatever you want me to.
yeah. I don't know.
Oh, maybe turn it that way. We go off this camera,
Okay,
Yeah.
let's try that.
Yeah, there we
and
go.
then you can see it, and then anybody at home can see
Yeah,
it.
there we go.
Huh? No, but can you see the actual diagram?
You can see the real
Yeah,
thing.
that's.
Yeah.
But we've got it on the
It's
TV.
online,
See it.
okay, so might be better,
Okay,
it's very
just
small.
for explanation purposes,
Okay.
there is
So-
a piece of equipment that is malfunctioning. So when he's shifting from camera to camera, there's a delay. So you're going to see
Okay.
the TV won't show up. Okay, so pick a camera
Stick
and
with
just
it.
go with that one camera. It'll bounce around.
Any camera will do.
Walk out in the middle of the audience.
All right, so this particular placard shows the main renovations that we're proposing for the phase one. So this, of course, is the stage area. This is the seating. This is the lobby area, for those of you who are familiar with that facility. So the seating would be going roughly from a 900-seat auditorium down to a probably a 700-seat auditorium. That's all new seating throughout, and that include like new flooring or refinishing of the flooring, painting of the auditorium area, but that would all be new, because I don't know if that's original, but it's uncomfortable, and it certainly needs that. So that's a pretty high priority. And then I'll kind of work around this way. Then there's currently here is a women's restroom. This is a men's restroom. So there would be actually the currently existing women's would be converted into a family restroom, or like a handicap accessible type of restroom there. And then there'd be, the men's restroom would be expanded, and then the other women's restroom would be along here. Back here in the back of the stage, this would be towards Center Street, and this is Washington, but that would be the elevator. That's not really part of the phase one, though, I guess. What else do we have? Catering kitchen and the bar, those are, actually, those are in the leased part.
Well, that's what I was kind of looking at this, and that's why I was
That's my mistake, that's my mistake. So the theater and the bar and the catering kitchen would be on the lease part, which is the 99-year lease part.
We own those. Reed, we own those.
This part?
Yeah, the two parts in the back, yeah.
Juts out.
The only thing we don't own is the little gym.
The property line juts out.
Property line runs along here.
Yeah, it goes that way too.
small gym, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to respectfully disagree with you on that. Property line comes in here, goes up here along the original school. Comes over here, follows this wall all the way up. This is that boiler room, pipe room thing. We're leasing that. Let's see, what am I missing?
Elevator.
Murals.
Oh, the elevator's right here. Okay, so that's, also right off of that main hallway that comes through the theater.
Say Reed, and when you say the main hallway, that is the property line then, is
That's
correct?
my understanding, yes, the north wall of that hallway is the property line.
So, us looking at the blueprints, the elevator's on the other, the least portion,
You're right.
and that's, and the developer's okay with putting these things in for the other side, with talks with with staff, and it's just a thought.
The developer?
Well, of the
Oh,
school side. You know,
yeah, I don't
that-
think that's a problem. I don't think that's a problem.
But,
I mean-
you know, when we're talking that if it's a city-owned project, you
Yeah.
know, so there's another technical.
I think
thing
that's a
maybe,
good point,
You know,
yes.
I'm just,
That's a legal issue that probably needs to be looked at,
you know, on that aspect.
right?
I think a lot of great ideas. Just,
No, I think that's a valid point we need to look at.
I guess, how much do you charge per seat today? Does it vary, or is it free?
It varies, $15, $20.
Is it 15, 20?
What's our top end? Is it 22 sometimes, 22?
For rentals, something like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, if somebody's renting the facility, it might be $400 or $600 per day for rental of the facility. For productions, you know, what are ticket charges? A part of that's driven by if there's a production coming into town, you know, it's their show, they're doing the ticket sales. I mean, they determine what they're gonna charge. Then it's a facility rental.
So when this was originally, was it a donation that was given? Or originally, how did the State Theater take ownership of this to begin with?
It was donated by Senate.
Okay. And then at that time, was there any sort of pro forma for how much you would earn in order to cover those costs? I mean, was that ever thought out at the time?
Are you talking in terms of like a sale of it to
Yeah,
us?
like,
It was not sold, it was sold to us for $1.
right, I'm aware of that, but I'm just saying at the time that happened, was there any logic involved as to how we're gonna cover the costs of having the building itself and maintaining it?
Yes, I mean, no, we had developed a business plan on how we're gonna be trying to cover the
Okay.
costs.
And so those had fallen short.
But remember now, I mean, on this facility, we were sharing that space with the district,
Okay,
subject to a 10-year lease, 8 years left as of now. When it was the school year, it was about an 80-20 usage, so we estimated. But it was roughly 80-20, where the district had 80% of the time, we had about 20% of the time. During the summer, it would probably be the reverse, where we probably had 80% of the time. They had, you know, some summer events and things like that. So that made it tougher to be able to generate revenues, you know, have time slots that you could do events. I think the district is probably moving on at this point. I don't know if they've formally made a decision with that, but I don't think they have any events currently scheduled in there. So, you know, a lot of this is transition. Transitioning it, ramping it up to the rentals, getting more rentals in there so that we can start meeting our operating budgets that we were projected in the future, you know, back when we were looking at this. So it's a transition.
So I guess that leads me to the question, are you in the business of putting on shows, or are you in the business of
Renting it?
renting it?
We're in the business of putting on shows, trying to own a theater and keep it afloat. Okay? We don't make a lot of money out of productions. I mean, productions, the cost of production and the net profit out of that is pretty thin. So, in order to supplement that, we have to find other sources of revenue. All right? So, we rent it out to some of the people, the events on the list that I showed you before, where they'll rent the facility, you know, things like that. So it's it's not our main operations, but we need it in order to keep the lights on.
What impact will this have on the existing city-owned community center?
I don't think it's going to have. You know, if you were, let's take wedding receptions, for example. What I understand and what I hear is lots of times all the places that are available are booked, and there's still a need for wedding receptions. Now, in its current state, it's not probably the best suited for wedding receptions, but we have had one or two there. You know, you got basketball hoops sticking out, and that won't always be the case.
But you are looking at taking like the wedding operation and the theater part of the process. Are you gonna be involved with the Meals on Wheels taken up there also because you have a kitchen, or?
That certainly hasn't been in discussions, no. Yeah, catering kitchen.
But it would shut down the theater part of the operation and the community center?
No.
So you're gonna have it in both places?
Yeah, I mean, it's really apples and oranges between the stage in the community theater and this stage up here. Although maybe that wasn't the original intent when it was built. Remember, when the first bonding was done, part of what was talked about as part of that was a full-scale theater auditorium, all right? And that really got scrunched down to what we have today in the community center, and that gets used a lot by seniors and the events that are down there. And we've done some productions down there. Steve's, New Ulm Actors Community Theater, I mean, we've done some productions down there. It is not an optimal place to put on full-scale performances. Like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang we did last year, there's no way you could have done that. We had a car that had 25-foot turning radius. There's no way you could have done it on that stage. And even with productions, I think Once Upon a Mattress we did, even with that, it was cramped with all the props, and you don't have any place to put them backstage. I mean, there's no room back there. It is not an optimal performing arts venue. You can make do if you need to, and that involves a lot of compromises, in terms of sets and those type of things. Whereas up here, you've got a basketball court for a backstage, and last year we used the whole thing as part of the production. It's really, I mean, you hear comparisons with the high school too. They've got similar space situations with their, how that's designed, all right? There's nothing anywhere near, certainly not in this town or surrounding communities. Sleepy Eye St. Mary's might have, I think they have a basketball court in their back, but there's nothing like that in town. And there are a lot of large productions that you could only do it in that type of venue. And personally for me, I'm hoping that if we can do these renovations and get them done in a way that the city can be proud of and restores that, I'm hoping when people walk in there, it'll be kind of like, wow, there'll be this wow effect. And people will be proud of that. Not that they aren't now, but productions and performances will be beating down the door to try to have their productions in there. That's what I'm hoping for. And I think that can happen.
One last question.
Yeah.
Given this revenue that we're talking about won't be available until the best case 2018,
Yeah.
possibly 2020. So give me your survival plan for between now and then.
We're not going to wait with our capital campaign until then. So we're going to start that soon. We've already started some preliminary parts of it. There's other issues we need to deal with, like getting the utilities switched over. Okay, so that's going to take some capital to do that. So we're planning on raising that ourselves. There'll be those grants. We're going to, if the district is out of it now, there's some productions that would only probably come into it after we've got the renovations done. But there are rentals that I think we could get in its current state, and as we evolve this. So our hope would be, our plan would be is in addition to the productions that we're putting on, that we would get enough rentals from an operating standpoint to to operate it. But that's probably not gonna build up a lot for us to put a new roof on if that roof goes bad. We'll keep the lights
I'm
on.
just talking about between from now to date.
Yep, yeah.
Until the proposed revenues.
We're gonna get after it and try to raise the capital if we can. I think it's a worthy, there's been a lot of things around this town where people, if they got behind it and they worked towards it, there's been some amazing things in this town. People have really been able to accomplish a lot in restoring, historical landmarks. I think this is a project that's worth getting behind. We just, we gotta get a little momentum going, not have setbacks.
I have a question for Brian, when you have a second, taking notes there. On the operating expenses, I think they had allocated maybe 39,000 as the expected amount to be picked up by the city. How are your feelings on that estimate of city taking ownership and maintaining and running the building? And then second, on the infrastructure, that wasn't included in the proposal. And if it's the roof and the HVAC and the electrical and everything else, any concerns from the city on that not being embedded within this proposal and maybe an expectation to come through the city budget?
Well, I've received the materials from, or all the materials that the District 88 has on the building. I didn't get plans and specs, but I got a lot of the reports and the information about the roof and all the things that need to be fixed and repaired, over probably the next 5 to 15, 20 years. And we're in the process of reviewing that and identifying the big things. The District 88 materials had an estimate of what the auditorium actually, used in utilities. And I don't know if that's where these numbers came from, but they're not totally out of whack. It's not one's 200,000 and one's 40, so we want to analyze that. So the information I received, just got yesterday. So it's kind of like we're just starting to, at the staff level, look at the information, look at what's there in the reports, so that when the city council, asks for input, we'll be able to provide that. So, do I have a definitive answer right now? I think the answer is no, but we're currently working on it and trying to get as much information as we possibly can put together, so when the question does come up and the decision has to be made, then we at least got some sound, a report to base it on. So yeah, I think the utilities are probably pretty close.
What about on the infrastructure side of not having that embedded within RENU formally? Do you see that as an issue?
Anything that's not going to be paid on RENU, we talked, briefly. Mr. Glaive talked about alternative funding sources. Well, the only alternative funding source we have would be, taxes. So the concern, I guess, is on what commitment of taking ownership of that property means as far as a local property tax. I think, everybody, all the citizens, would support, an increase in taxes if they got something out of it. I mean, that was the whole idea behind the local option sales tax, 16 years ago, was that they saw they were going to get something out of it, and they said, yes, sign me up, I'll pay that extra, tax. So if that were to happen with the property taxes on this particular project, I'm sure the city council would say, the city council the city is behind this project, and they're willing to pay the taxes. One of the things that came up after I arrived here, first off, the original sales tax had been approved by the citizens, and construction had not yet started. And so we built $12.5 million worth of facility, and that first year when we put the budget together, the Civic Center had a $450,000 increase in the local property tax. And it's just where the tire hits the road on this. But the city council at that time said the community wanted these structures, so it makes no sense to have the structure and not operate them. So we increased, there were some years we increased taxes, 8, 11%, because we had to fund these things. We committed to them. You got to pay the utilities. You can't have ice without the electricity to fire up the generator or the compressor. So all of that went hand in hand. So the question for the city council is going to be, looking at the projected expenses, is there community support to increase your taxes to pay for these if it doesn't get into the local option sales tax to help fund the roof at, 10 years from now? So
I guess I look at it now, and, I mean, at least the initial proposal wasn't to include anything beyond what they had as phase one, which was the
Right.
interior seating and.
That's the phase one, but they want to include in the language the ability to capture any excess revenues to put money aside for the roof. So I'm tying these two things together. Is that not my understanding of
Oh, you're
your proposal?
Just not quite as
That's
clean as
right.
probably what I would.
We don't know whether there will be excess
Right.
sales tax revenues. Okay, so that's an assumption.
Yeah.
But what we're hoping is that we can write it, if we get included with RENU, we want the legislation to be written, if we can, in a way so that if there are excess sales tax revenues over and above what the bonding payments are, that we can we can use those, we can bank those, if you will, and use those for the big things.
My concern, what I'm hearing is, if there is a known infrastructure need that we can see coming, to kind of put it as we hope we'll have excess sales tax to pay for that, I would be rather saying, what's the money that's truly needed for the building? And be upfront and say it's more than the $1 million and build it into RENU, so we can be secure in our financial projection. It's there, and it wouldn't come back to haunt us of, if we have a shortfall in sales tax and we have a failing building, that it automatically has to come back to the city.
I can share a little bit about the roof. When Senate acquired it, we did have one of the local roofing companies look at the current state of the roof at that time, and there were no issues with it, but I don't remember what the remaining useful life was of that. I don't have that off the top of my head.
Okay. Well, just something I think I'd be interested in knowing more about, yes, the operating expense side, but also the kind of infrastructure, HVAC, the big ticket items of what are we looking at so we can best project that. And my only other question is related to, you had mentioned a couple times Senate and State Street Theater. What's the I don't know that I understand what the relationship is between the two, and is there any funding from Senate that's
No,
projected here?
Senate has been dissolved. Senate was originally organized as a group of community citizens, business persons, community leaders, if you will, to try to tackle the problem. I remember, 10 years ago, that entire block up there was a boil on the city's backside, the district's backside, and the community's backside. Nobody knew what to do with it, okay? Then the district finally decided they were gonna put it up for sale. The first go-around didn't go through, except at a $100,000 bid that never happened. We approached the district again after that and started discussions about what they would need in terms of an interim arrangement. They were hoping to get a bond, passed for their other facilities and their other needs. So as part of that, Senate was organized because we needed something to take title to it. And then Senate's goal was to try to get these structured so that, get the subdivision done, get the entire complex on a historical register, because that would then potentially allow for tax credits to do the renovations, particularly on the apartment side of the complex. Find a developer who is able and willing to do that, so we kind of got that launched off on a good path, and then to try to figure out how to preserve the theater part of it and make sure that had a soft landing for future generations. So Senate accomplished that part. They, so then they've dissolved after that. They gifted the theater to State Street Theater Company, and now we're trying to figure out the path.
Any final questions from the committee? Wouldn't it be final? Any, Jeff?
Just
Yeah.
one question, Reed. Just to get an idea, how many people come into town, minus the folks who put on the production? How many folks over the course of a year, throughout all your productions and things that you put on, how many people come in? How many tickets did you sell?
Yeah, you're asking just from outside of town.
No, I meant the whole.
Oh, well,
the whole,
if
you
you look
had
at-
mentioned 1,000 for one of the
Yeah,
productions.
I would be estimating, because we don't have really good data on that. In our summer production, which is our large production, we usually average around 1,000 people coming in on that over the course of 3 shows. You know, dinner theater is 90 for each show. I think that has been fairly constant. Community concerts.
Camps.
So is that 2,000
It's gotta be,
8,000 total. I would bet if you include all the rentals and everything else, 8,000 people come.
I think it's comfortably over 2. It's probably, it's probably over 3. We start getting up much higher than that,
Close
then we
enough.
are pulling the numbers out of someplace, so.
All right.
Keith, I'm sorry I don't have better
Allocate-
information on that, because that would be good for us too.
I was just gonna add, so, you know, you discussed a very small amount of time, the new theater going up at the high school, and then there's also a theater at MLC.
Correct.
Do they, now you said that they don't necessarily have the logistics to deal with some of the productions that you would wanna put on, but what kind of seating capacity do they have? Would they be able to meet the seating capacity of you, and you would just be restricted by the type of production you
The
could
type
put
of
on?
production, yeah.
But
I mean, and I don't know. I got whole chorus back here. You know, the one thing that State Street Theater's always struggled with, back when it was Pioneer Players and New Ulm Actors Community Theater, was finding stage time. You know, whether it was down at the community center, up at MLC, we put productions on, you know, both places, or any other, the Grand, you know, we put some productions on there. So as always, the struggle was trying to find stage time. The things about the new high school and MLC is they have very small backstage areas as well. So you are limited. I mean, you're either making compromises in the type of sets you're building and designing, and what your props are that you can use with those settings, if you're gonna be performing there, or you're not performing it there. The State Street Theater is unique in that respect. There's nothing like that around.
Thank you.
I want to allocate some time, and thank you for the patience for those from Turner Hall and Newega. You're patiently waiting. Thank you. I think we're over our 10 minutes. I don't know. Where are we going?
I said on my presentation, I didn't include
great.
questions.
No. We're doing well. I think you obviously have an engaged committee and engaged room, so I want to turn it over to the public and be mindful, respectful of the time. We do have one more presentation, but really would like to hear from the public here, and if you're interested, I would ask you to step up to the mic and again state your name and your address for the record, and any comments you'd like to share with the committee.
Dick Seaboth, my address is 11 North State Street. I occupy that home with my wife Sharon, and we are speaking in favor of the theater. It does cause a little bit of a ruckus, but we don't have any parking in front of our home. But it's an important item when you consider that after New Ulm, going west and south, civilization dies off. We have to get and keep theater as part of our community. The item that was just brought up about, well, why can't this company share with MLC or the school district? It's a genuine scheduling nightmare to try to get events in between what is planned by those schools. And I can understand that they have a very limited amount of time to get their productions together, but there just isn't much time to sandwich in even a one-night stand at those facilities. The community desperately needs something larger than the community center, that if you stack people on top of each other, maybe 300, 350. It's really difficult to come up with a place. Switch hats. I'm the business manager of the Concord Singers, and we go all over the Midwest and have seen theaters like the one in New Ulm that have been improved by the community in one way or another. They need to happen here. We have our 85th anniversary concert this year, is presently scheduled for the State Street Theater. We'd like that to happen, but to go anywhere else in the community, again, we're very constrained. There just isn't a place that's available to do concerts, do plays, that will give us enough space or give anyone in the community an opportunity to bring something to the stage. Please consider that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dick. Ladies first, yeah, thanks, Kurt, for waiting.
Pull the mic
Yeah.
down, pull the mic down so they
Yep,
hear
no.
you. There you go.
Thank you for coming.
Good evening. My name is Ashley Schaefer. I am a fourth grader at St. Anthony Elementary School. Since I was 2 years old, I have been drawn to the arts, specifically music and theater. I couldn't sit still when I heard music, and I would recite and imitate the children's movies I watched. My parents were encouraged to get me involved in music lessons, plays, and performing for various local events. My mom heard about auditions the Newham Actors Community Theater was holding for the play It's a Wonderful Life. I auditioned and received the part of Zuzu. Since then, I have performed in many more plays and musicals with what is now called the State Street Theater. Through these experiences, I have gained confidence, self-reliance, collaboration with children and adults, creative thinking, and the list goes on. I continue to use these as I voluntarily go to local nursing homes and assisted living places to sing, play piano, and violin for the residents. My theater experience has also enhanced my ability to join other performance groups to deliver entertainment that for the moment allow the audience to escape the stressors of reality. My wish is that the State Street Theater continues to be available to give me and others many more of these experiences. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
Kurt, you're gonna follow
That's
that?
tough to follow.
Yeah.
I feel like I should have brought a puppy or something. Okay, I'm Kurt Lombrecht, 616 South State Street, and I'm speaking as a community member. I really haven't been involved in either Senate or the State Street Theater, but I want to speak in favor of this proposal. I think it's probably one of the more complicated ones you're going to look at, but I've learned over time that sometimes the most complicated things have the best results. So I would urge you not to discount it just because there's some moving pieces that haven't been solved yet. When I look back, I was involved in the community groups the first time we did this tax proposal, and at that time there had been a citywide retreat, and a performing arts center was the #1 request at that time that came out of that community retreat. And for a long time it appeared that a community performing center was going to be one of the 3 facilities. That proposal morphed into more of an elaborate setting at the senior citizen building, which was called at that time. And there is a small multi-purpose facility there, but it is certainly not a performing site or a stage. The stage is not high enough to be used. The sound and lighting is non-existent, basically. There's no backspace to use for anything, construction, setup, anything. So really, to compare that facility, that never really happened. So I think that desire that existed already over 20 years ago is still there. The same situation with school, even though we're all excited about the new school facility, the request for that existed when this was a school facility because the community could never use it because the school always had it booked. So that need still exists. So I think the need is still there, and we have done wonderful things in our sports facilities in town. I think we're going to do some wonderful things in some park facilities as a result of this, but I think doing something for the performing arts is hugely important. Lastly, in terms of the numbers they were talking about, I think when they were answering your question about numbers, they were talking about numbers for their performances. But for an example, community concerts are there 3 to 4 times a year with about 800 people at each performance. So that alone is over, 25 to 3,000 people. And many of the other touring events that happen there have anywhere in the excess of 500. So the number is shouted out about 8,000 is probably much closer, probably would be my guess. But
Thank you.
vote yes. I'll bring up Poppy.
Hi, good evening.
I'm Paul Henning, 1820 Willow Road. I'd like to speak about the community aspect of this project. It's a community theater. My family participates in these with me, and sometimes they're ashamed of what I've done. If you saw some of the pictures, you saw some goofball with a coconut bra and a ship tattooed on his belly. That was me. And also the community aspect of this theater. I have met people that I would never have met had it not been for State Street Theater Company, New Act. We, people that go to all the different churches in town, I would never have met them had I not been in this theater group. And I've made some good friends with people that all over the city. This project is very worthwhile for building a community, and we have a lot of talented people in New Ulm that I think some of them just build up your courage. If you got to go out there in a coconut bra, go out there and do it. Get on stage with us, and I hope that we can keep this stage around here for a long, long time.
Thank you. Maybe one or if other people are thinking, maybe one or two more, and then I'll give instructions on how to get more feedback to us or more thoughts and comments from the public. Thank you.
Hi, Michael Kester, brand new resident of 26 North Garden Street. I'm actually graduating Martin Luther College in about 2.5 weeks, and I'm counting the days. If you don't know much about Martin Luther College, I think you do, but it is a teacher-pastor college, and when we're finished there, we usually get a call throughout the United States. I was originally teacher track, and I could have gone to any state in the United States of America to teach. So the MLC students bring a lot of youth to New Ulm. They work in the community. I know after what happened at Perkins, a lot of my classmates were out of a job. They bring a lot of workers into the community and a lot of youth, and they participate in community theater and things like that. But then they graduate and then they leave. I was about to do the same thing until last summer, and I've been involved in MLC productions and done theater almost my whole life. And I saw State Street Theater do a show, and I really, really wanted to get involved. So I changed my mind about becoming a teacher to work and be a part of State Street Theater. I didn't really have any involvement with non-profits up until now, and I think combining my two favorite things, community and performing arts, is a fantastic thing, and it will also bring, I mean, no offense to the board, but they're kind of getting up there in their years. And then
That wasn't offensive, don't worry, yeah.
Someone like me comes along, and others like me, and we bring a new youth to this community theater. So bringing, as Reed was saying before, that expanse of ages from kids to people who are retired and still being an active part of the community. So
thank you.
I support this.
Appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Jean Elma. I live at 1101 South Ridge in town, and I would urge you to approve this proposal both from a personal standpoint and as a community member. When I moved here 10 years ago, Brenda Nielsen got me to catch the acting bug. And since then, I've participated in numerous cast and a number of State Street productions. The last few years, when you were part of a cast production, you rehearsed in some church basement because we couldn't get the cast stage until a week or two before the production. And then we had to share with a very nice church and all the other activities that occur at the senior center. The times I've been part of the State Street productions, we've been able to work on our stage from the beginning. And for an inexperienced amateur actress, this is wonderful. The second reason, though, I think is more important. We have a number of wonderful proposals here. Most of them, however, have to do with the outdoors and sports activities. New Ulm is more than that. And I think supporting the arts is just as important as supporting a baseball field. Thank you.
A couple more, and then we're going to have to move on. Maybe one or two more.
Really short.
Yeah. Okay.
Laura Sievert, 425 South State. From my address, you can probably tell I'm a history buff. Love old houses, love old stuff. We have a jewel in that building, and I would hate to see, because of a lack of funding, that jewel deteriorate and have to be torn down. I think it's very valuable. The other, very briefly, the same thing Jane Elmo just said. At the high school, I've always noticed that the activities director calls himself the athletic director. We have a problem with that in town, that athletics is huge, and we have facilities, we have wonderful facilities, but it's time to give the arts their fair share. Thanks.
Thank you. And for the rest of the community here and public that would have an interest in sharing feedback with the committee, on the website, I believe, right, Brian, we have contact information for all of the RENU committee. So you'd have email addresses, so I would encourage everyone, if you weren't able to speak up tonight, to be able to send us a note. Would appreciate hearing from the community. Thank you, Reed, for the presentation.
Thank you.
And we will move on to the second proposal, and that is from Turner Hall and Nuega and Virginia and Jamie. So let's
Take a 2-minute break.
2-minute stretch break, and they'll get presentations ready.
Break for Lennon. Well, get everybody.
I think it might be warmer in the back of the room.
I think there's a jewelry party going on in my house, so I can't go home before 9.
I'm a notoriously fast talker, so we can do that too.
All right, we have our committee back. Ready? Okay, well, welcome back, everybody. Again, thanks for the great community support and turnout tonight, and your patience as we work through these important proposals. So next up, we have the Turner Hall and Nuega proposal, and I think going to hear from Virginia and Jamie to kind of provide you saw the last segment here, an overview, highlights of the proposal, and then we'll open it up for questions from the committee and input, comments, and questions from the public. So I'll turn it over to you.
All right, that sounds good. We'll start with introductions. My name is Virginia Molden, and I've been with Turner Hall for 10 years.
Jamie Reeser. I am the current board president at Nuega.
David Hurth, I'm the president of Turner Hall. Gary Cook, I'm on the board.
Okay. All right, well, thank you so much for having us. I've been at most of these meetings, and you guys do not have an enviable job at all. I can't imagine how many people stop you on the street, and every single presentation I've heard would be hard for me to not consider extremely valuable. So, and I've seen how much time you've spent here, so thank you. Thank you for that, and thank you for listening to us. We know that we have a complicated project, and we know that it's a little bit unique, and so we're here to ask you for some creativity. You know, we want you to listen to our project with an open mind and to consider what we're going to talk about today a huge opportunity for the city. Meaning that we're bringing some things to the table that could maximize the dollars that you're looking at spending. And I think that we have some numbers and some things today that can show you that. So a little bit about Turner Hall. I mean, we're here to talk about gymnastics, but I want to give you a background on what Turner Hall is. So Turner Hall, Turner means gymnast. So the gymnastics was founded in Germany by a man who was looking to create better soldiers and warriors. And when the Germans came to the United States, they brought that philosophy with them. It was not just physical, it was social, it was sound mind and a sound body. And when New Ulm was founded, the Turners founded New Ulm right along with that same philosophy, creating the society that had the first school and the first library and the first gymnastics program. They talked about art being here forever. Well, the Turners were practicing 2 years before the first play. You know, they were practicing in 1856. So gymnastics has been here a long time. There truly is a heritage of gymnastics to the town. And there's a reason that gymnastics is so important. It's because it's a fundamental athletic activity. It's not simply just, you know, basketball, which I'm a huge fan of. I played my whole life. But this is a fundamental activity to every single sport we have in town. Meaning if you're working at gymnastics, you're working at every single possible athletic activity that you could strive to do. So, Taylor, we can kind of get started here. All right. So what Taylor made here for us, oh, we did not introduce Taylor. I apologize.
Yeah, I'm Taylor Weber, and I'm the director at Turner Hall Gymnastics, the rec part of it.
Yes, sorry, apologize. Taylor made this PowerPoint from us. It comes directly out of the packet that you all have in front of you. So Jamie and I will work our way through that. So the need that we have is the continued increase for demand and health of our children. Everybody knows that there's this obesity epidemic. You know, you hear about health constantly, you hear about nutrition. We are proposing we combine our programs, and we have a collaboration to provide this program for the health of the students in New Ulm. The really important part of this slide is the number 500. What we're saying today is that Newaga, combined with Turner, supports over 500 gymnasts every year, and I think that's probably a small number. We could certainly provide more. Turner Hall has capped its program. It cannot grow anymore, as does Newaga.
And the same for us, that we are finding that when we talk about, you know, the space and safety issues, that what Turner has is that they can't use their facility year-round because it's also a banquet facility. And so they're constant tear down and put back up and tear down and put back up and seasonal. We do at Newaga have a year-round program, but we share space with the high school. We do lease to the high school gymnastics program. So high school gymnastics in New Ulm is also contingent on a gym being available for them to work out of. And so that is our gym currently, but that also leaves space constraints for our club program, because during the winter months of the high school gymnastics season, we have high school in our gym from basically, they come after school, so 3 until 5:30 is kind of their time in the gym, which allows us to not have any classes in there because we don't have a large enough space to run high school and club practices at the same time. So then that pushes back the availability of time for our classes, and a lot of times we can't run, as many of you have small children or had at one time, you can't run classes for small children at 8 o'clock at night. So we have time constraints there, and we haven't been able to offer all of the classes that we could fill if we had time and space, a larger space to be able to run multiple classes at the same time.
And we have a lot of talented gymnasts in both programs, and some of these constraints have been causing our both teams to go out of town. So the Turner team travels to Mankato multiple times a year because they have skills, and we take safety very seriously, and we won't have them practice those skills in our space. And also when we run into time constraints, we send them over to Mankato. And Newaga does the same thing with Eden Prairie.
Yeah, we will, at times, we will go, you know, to Mankato or, you know, up to New Prague for camps and things like that, because as Jenny said, our facilities are safe for what we do, so I don't want to give them the wrong impression. They are safe for the gymnastics that we do, but there are larger and more complicated skills that our gymnasts could learn, but they're having to go out of town to learn those because there are different facilities there that provide safer environments for our gymnasts to learn those things.
There's also demand for some programs for boys. We both have some demand, but we don't have space. And we believe that if we combined our programs and found the space, that there'd be a lot of interesting avenues we could take. One would be traditional gymnastics, and New Ulm has a history of being very successful in men's gymnastics. I had a meeting with Jim, the old gymnastics coach, and one year he had multiple men that qualified for major scholarships and full ride scholarships to major universities. You know, we have some alternate Olympians. New Ulm has a history of great men's gymnastics, and we'd like to see that again. There's also a couple trends that have been happening that we think that New Ulm is going to gonna start absorbing. That is Ninja Warrior, if anybody's seen anything like that on TV, or parkour. It's kind of like an ultra gymnastics, and it's a real baseline of being able to use your body and understand your body at the ultimate level of fitness. So we can go to the next one. We have some pictures up here. This is, I'll let Jamie talk to this. This is a picture of Nuaga's facility.
Yes, this is, these are pictures from a meet situation. We do host meets at our gym. Last year, our club competed in 7 meets. 5 of those were home meets. We will not be able to do the extent of meets in the future without a different building. Last year, there's a couple of you on the committee that were in that space during meets and understand how inadequate that is. Some of our parents may be able to talk about that later too. But we don't have space to have the gymnasts that we have between our competitive teams and our training team, and we do offer our training team opportunities to compete at meets, not all of our meets, but some of them. There are about 40 girls, and most of the time for club type meets, if you have 40 girls, they're each probably bringing 4 to 6 family members with them to these meets. And there is not adequate space to have that kind of audience in our gym. And so this is a little bit, you can see back, oh, you want to go back, Taylor? Thanks. And the top picture, that's kind of, we got some bleachers from the city, so they were wonderful and let us borrow some of the real low 3-level bleachers this past competition season, which we haven't had in the past, so this was actually an improvement. But we have one of those set of bleachers under the flag there, and so that's actually, that landing mat is the landing mat for the beam. So the gymnasts are landing literally right in front of the audience because there's nowhere else to put the bleachers. And then the other bleachers there are right beside kind of that set of bars. And then the bottom picture is actually taken during warm-ups, but that just gives an example of how crowded it is for all the gymnasts to be in a space because they have to have somewhere to sit while the others are competing, and there's not adequate space in our gym to have them sit anywhere except for places kind of on the floor in between mats and kind of crushed up against the wall because there's nowhere else for them to be.
All right, we are in the same situation. We do not host meets because we do not have the space. If you've been in our gym during our classes, which a lot of parents do come to the classes, especially the little ones, they're lined up against the side on short little benches, and you can see how close they are to our track. So that it creates an issue for us, though we can't have anybody sitting there when the competitive girls are running on that track because it would be a safety issue. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Yeah, so if we decided that we've talked about our space issue, we combine these, a safe place for everybody to watch is important. How is this going to address the need? And this is the part that I think has the most moving pieces and is going to have the most questions. And that's why we're excited to come here and try to start working those out. We propose that Nuaga dissolves and joins Turner Hall. And Turner Hall continues to keep operating as Turner Hall with the guidance and expertise of the folks that have been helping grow Nuaga. We propose that it's built on Turner Hall property, and it's large enough to combine the growing needs of both of our programs and the high school. We will be building it towards girls and boys, and we are considering an elevated track, climbing wall, and a trampoline corner. And the climbing wall and trampoline corner are geared towards those alternate gymnastics. We have 2 different phases. We had 1 phase, but it came in at a much higher budget than we had planned. So we worked with the architect to break it into a number that we thought was a little bit more manageable. So the first phase is the gymnastics areas, bathrooms, and concessions. That's what we're asking for your help with. Phase 2 is locker rooms, weight room, educational rooms, and storage. So it would be finishing off the rest of the extra space in the building. Again, Associates who completed this study for us, we worked with them back in 2010 when we did our addition. This is moving on to the operational part. What we're suggesting is that, like I said, the city consider this an opportunity to work with a club, 2 clubs that have a great reputation. We are offering land, our reputation, our expertise, in addition, and we're asking for a building that would be owned by the city but operated by Turner Hall, meaning that we would offer a rent for that building, and we would handle all the labor, the overhead, we would have a sinking fund, capital sinking fund, so we're not asking for any money down the line. We're telling you that we can run this building and run this program at absolutely no cost to the city after the program's complete. We're also telling you that we're interested in giving back through rent and through tax dollars. Jamie's program currently has a couple of meets during the year. We currently do not. What we're proposing, we'll have many, many more meets every year, bringing people into town. We'll also have the opportunity for the high school to consider sectionals and regionals, and conference meets would also bring a lot of people to town. Oh, there's the both groups. And we're excited about the possibility of combining the two programs. Just for a little bit of history, the programs were together until about 15 years ago, when they broke apart. And we've been working together for, what, about 2 years?
Yeah, informal discussions for quite some time.
And we believe that the best for the city of New Ulm for gymnastics is to combine the two programs, but we logistically have no other options as far as space. You know, we've looked at buildings in town that are large enough for us, and we haven't found any, with the exception of the newly vacated Target. We haven't looked into that, but that would be three gyms in there. You can keep going. So we talked already a little bit about operating and maintenance demands. That's included in your packet. The operating budget was formed from information from both committees, both organizations, and the wages we went really on the high side, and the expenses we really pushed them on the high side. We did the opposite for the revenue. I would not want to put together a project that I didn't feel 100% could succeed, because I would not propose something to you that I didn't think we had a 100% chance of operating on our own.
And I think that, when we talk about that we envision it being that the city, we're asking for this money to build a building which Turner Gymnastics would run. We're open to other ideas. We see this as a best case scenario, that there wouldn't be city costs for ongoing operations and maintenance. We both run programs right now that we can sustain. We are both able to sustain our current gymnastics programs with you guys with a building, us with our rent and with our equipment and all of that. We're able to maintain all of that, both programs. What we're not able to fund is a brand new building that will fit both of us. And so I think that's where we're coming to the city and saying that we think this would be optimal, that we would be able to sustain all of that and provide all of the staffing and all of that going forward. If that's something the city wanted to be more involved in, I think we're open to hearing ideas for how that would work. So.
All right, how will the project be impacted if the funding is not provided? That is a good question. There's a couple different answers to that. One is, it has been on the table at Turner Hall the last couple of years. How does our gymnastics program evolve? We have a rich history with the building, and we have the rich history with gymnastics, but can they both continue to survive in the same space? And that's not a given anymore. It's definitely been on the table that Turner Hall Gymnastics may not be around forever. And that's kind of a scary thing to say out loud. It's something that is hard to put on the record, but it has been on the table, and that's something that could happen in the future. Turner Hall could choose to embrace the history direction of our program, and maybe adult educational things instead of gymnastics. Newaga would continue to operate the way they are. They wouldn't be able to absorb our students because they're already full. So we would be leaving about 240 students each session without a gymnastics program, which would really be unfortunate.
And we have talked about that at Newaga board meetings, that what would happen if Turner dissolved. And we have absolutely no answers for how we would accommodate those students, because we don't have the space or the time to add additional classes. Even if we absorbed coaching from Turner, if they dissolved, we still don't have the spaces to put those coaches in. So there wouldn't be an option to absorb those 200 plus students every year. Okay. Or each session, actually.
Yeah, we've talked about, our last funding campaign was mentioned, and that we did build a beautiful addition. It took us about 7 or 8 years for $500,000. And what we're saying with this program is that our needs are so immediate. They're saying we need to move now. What can we do? We're saying the same thing. We are out of space. Our needs are immediate. We are interested in starting a capital campaign to improve on this project, but we are asking for the full amount to get this project going. right off the bat. The other thing I wanted to discuss is, it's been mentioned to me, but there's a lot of nonprofits in town that want buildings, you know, why you? Well, there's a couple answers. Is one, we've proven, we have a building, we have 2 buildings, and we've proven that we can do it. Turner Hall's ran a gymnastics program for 160 years. We have a great track record, and I think that you can feel safe with us with this. We're not going to close tomorrow. The other is, you know, we're talking a lot about intangibles at these meetings, like, you know, the children benefit, and we're a more well-rounded community, so more people might come see us, but we have those tangibles too with the rent. You know, we're gonna be paying some rent. We have the tangibles with the tax dollars that we will be bringing to town, which are offset by absolutely no cost to your group or to the city. So I think that's a pretty big swing. So that's what makes us different than every other nonprofit that would like to have a building, is that we're a safe bet, and we'll do a great job. So at the end of here, we got, the project will benefit over 500 gymnasts, adults and seniors, and the community will serve the city of New Ulm. So currently in our gym, we have some programs for seniors during the day. I only imagine that that's going to increase. We have a benefit or base membership of a lot of people who are older, and I think that we would probably bring a lot more people to Turner Hall just for those senior health classes. Problem implementation. We are ready to go right away. As soon as that we talked about when the money was available, we can sustain our program until then, but we would be ready to join forces. Our coaches are already getting to know each other. We're working out those tricky details about combining 2 programs. We're suggesting that Turner Hall manages the program and that the operation is all on site. And that is our last one. Okay, can you pause that? Yeah. All right, so the very last part about our presentation is that we are working on a way to educate the public that we are truly committed to working together. You know, that's a hard thing to imagine after 15 years of, you know, of being apart, coming together. It's a tricky project. So we put together, our girls have been practicing and doing things together. We did a video, which we're going to show you. The video is meant to just show some gymnastic skill, but basically demonstrate the unity of the 2 programs, and that we're really in a collaboration, and our goal is to move forward together. So. Okay, so that concludes our slideshow and our program. So we're ready for questions.
All right, great, thank you. Look to the committee. Who's ready to open it up with the first question?
Has there been any consideration of expanding on the Nuega building?
We do not own that building. Viking Land owns that building, so we currently lease, so we have not looked at expanding upon that. Up till now, they haven't been really amenable to us doing any physical changes to that building, so no.
Are you the only tenant?
We are. Viking Land has their offices, their business offices, in the front half of the building, so we don't actually use the whole building.
Has either program talked to the city park and rec about, you know, any spaces available within the city, you know,
I've met with Tom a few times. I didn't specifically ask for space. Did not imagine that was something that, I mean, the amount of space we're talking about for combined floors, 10,000 square feet with a ceiling of quite some height. So
Yeah.
it's a unique space that is quite large.
Mm-hmm. For competition, we have to have 18-foot ceilings. which has been our struggle in looking at buildings around town. Newaga has taken some time and looked at multiple buildings that were empty and they don't have the ceiling space that we need. So then they would require an addition of a space to have at least bars in, because you have to have the 18-foot ceilings.
There's also we also need to have a pit, which means, you know, a hole in the floor for safe practice.
Thank you. Other questions? Jeff?
How many tournaments are run now? How many tournaments do you think you'll be able to run in the future, and how many participants would come into town?
We run none.
Okay. Currently, we competed in 7 meets with our club last year. We had 5 of those as home meets, and we had we can't compete all of our teams. That is part of the issue. We had 3 competitive teams and a training team. We would compete 2 or 3 of those groups at a time. There's 8 to 10 girls per team. And so, you know, if we had 3 of our teams, approximately 30 girls, and then we brought in another club that had 2 or 3 teams, then, you know, they would have 30 girls. That's 60 girls, plus all of their families. Like I said, I think probably kids tend to bring probably 6 people with them at least to each of these meets. It feels like that in the gym anyway. So, you know, we have that, and like I said, we had 5 of those meets last year. I would envision, if we had a larger space, what we would like to do is have some of those meets where we have just one club come, but we would like to have some invites, which would, a lot of the other invites that we go to out of town, sometimes in the metro area, we will go and there will be 14 teams there. So not 14 clubs, but 14 teams, because each club has multiple teams. But so then you would be looking at that. About 14 teams would come, with each of those teams having about 10. Each team can't have more than 10, so that's where I get that number, is that usually have between 8 and 10. So, you know, if you looked at an invite, that may be 140 girls, and then, so that's families.
And are those multiple day tournaments, single day tournaments?
Not usually. They're usually single day tournaments. What happens is if they're a further distance, many times you do stay overnight. So that is another aspect that we could maybe use hotel space in the winters, because we typically do 1 or 2 away meets where we will stay overnight, because you need to be there for warm-up starting at 7:30 or 8 in the morning. And if you're looking at a 2-hour drive, a lot of families aren't going to do that at 5 a.m., so they're going to stay the night before.
Would the high school use this as well for their meets?
Yes, they would.
Because I would imagine they'd be a
yes.
separate entity still.
Yes, and they would. They currently do use our gym for meets. It's, again, an inadequate space for them. They are not able to petition for conference or sections because we don't have the space for that at Newaga, and that's their only place to compete. So they do have their meets at our place, and if we did have a larger space, they would be able to have conference or sections.
And there's nothing going to be put into the new high school?
No, we've had discussions with the new high school on multiple occasions, and they are not doing anything for gymnastics in that building.
Okay. Thank you.
Do the programs run year-round?
Ours does. Newaga runs year-round. As I mentioned earlier, Turner has the space constraints with banquets because they use the same facility space for their weddings and things like that. So during summer, that's an off-season for their gymnastics. We do run year-round at Newaga.
Which also makes it very difficult for a lot of the girls, because girls in the Dynamites, which is the team that is more competitive, it's the team girls, they can't compete or they can't practice for 3 months over the summer, and so they come back and they have to work on skills they already had in order to get them back. And so it's a very tough process, because it's this time they don't have is frustrating, and they can't continue to move forward due to the facilities that we have.
We also have an issue during on time on our competitive girls. Our Dynamites only practice once a week. Now, if you know that, you know, athletes have to practice more often like that. However, we have a very talented coach, and we have some talented kiddos, and they're in the room here. That we have one that won at state with only 1 day a year, and we have some that have placed. So we have an extremely talented program, despite the fact that we have all those time constraints.
Do you know what % of either of your programs the gymnasts are from outside of New Ulm?
Ours is right around 19 to 21%. We do also know that there's an exodus of students from our town to other places because of gymnastics. In fact, some of the most talented kids will be going, they'll take the time to drive to Mankato to continue to practice their skills because they have more time in the gym over there and they have better equipment.
And I don't know a percentage on ours. I would guess it's slightly lower than at Turner. But what I can tell you is where we pull kids from primarily would be Sleepy Eye, Redwood Falls, the Gibbon, Winthrop, kind of that area. We do pull quite a few students from there. And we've had a lot of interest recently from Redwood Falls. And because their gym, again, is not a year-round gym, so their students sometimes come down here just for the summer and go back, but sometimes they come down here and really like what we have and hope they can be here year-round, so then they just start coming to our gym all the time.
Do you know how peer communities fund gymnastics facilities? So if you go around the state of Minnesota, how are the others operated and funded?
Sure. There's a couple different ways. For instance, it was Eden Prairie. Is that
New Prague?
New Prague. New Prague luckily had a lot of students that had families that were in the construction business and had this really unique situation where they all got together and built a gym. And we've not that we haven't explored that.
Gotta find other gymnasts.
Right. Yes. Go to construction sites and recruit their kids. So that is an example. Some of them are privately owned. Some of them have some city subsidies. So there's a little bit of everything. There's a few Turners still in existence, but there's none in Minnesota anymore.
Has either program considered, we've got one of our projects to consider as an indoor playground, for the community. I think the thought was a 200 by 200, but if we would make it large enough that you would consider to lease, a space, so we're, instead of building multiple buildings, maybe we're just building one building on a site in the community.
Yeah, absolutely.
In those capacities.
Considered having the playground at our site too. It's very conducive to what a family with kids would want to visit indoors, especially if we have the trampoline park and all that. So we've considered both options. However, ideally, to run a program with as many moving parts and 500 plus students, it would be a lot easier to do it in a close proximity to where our business already is. But like I said, we just want the programs to continue to exist, so we're open-minded.
Where are you in the process with City Council in reference to this? There's something being proposed or has been proposed?
No, not.
Are you waiting for us?
We're waiting for you.
Yes.
We've met with the city attorney, Roger Hippert, and discussed different options, took his temperature on the situation, and now we're waiting for this.
So then again, one more, I have to go back to the timeline then. You're waiting for us, and I'm making the best assumption that your project went to the top of the heap and it got through all the way through the legislature and you got the money. You wouldn't get money until either 2018 or 20. So what's the plan between now and then?
Sure.
Before your two organizations?
Well, we just continue to cap the amount of girls that are allowed to compete. They'll continue to to not have all the competition that they want to have. And
we will have to cut back how we compete next year. I shouldn't say cut back. We'll have to change how we compete next year because we will not be able to have the number of girls after this past season. In my mind, that was kind of disastrous. And so we cannot have that amount of people in our space at one time. So we will have to change how we compete, which means that we'll have to have only part of our girls competing at a time.
So in your words, what would be the urgency and timing for this building?
I think urgency is safety in that we can't continue to work on girls getting bigger skills, and then the other piece of that is that if we can't continue to work with our top athletes, that they're going to go somewhere else because they can do those skills in Mankato where they have a block pit that they can safely do the skills that they want to do on bars, specifically, but there's other skills too that if we don't have those facilities, our athletes will go elsewhere to be able to get those.
Has Turner Hall approached the community development coordinator, Dave Schnolbrook, in regards to building on the property, as far as the parking and the size of the structure and setbacks of any nature?
We haven't discussed with
preliminary.
Dave Schnolbrook specifically, but we've met with a couple people from the city about as far as parking. What we're really looking at is how many spots we would need for something of that nature, which we would have to take some of our park for parking, obviously. And as far as the space, I think that, who's the city engineer that I would have met with? I don't know, it's been about a year since we went through all of that, but I feel like we got the green light that our space is large enough to handle what we're proposing to do.
And then other than like historic, is the state okay with historic, that if a new building goes up, is there some sort of criteria that may have to, you know, facades and things of that nature? I know it's a separate entity, but,
Yes,
you know, if
it's always an issue with Turner Hall, is what can we do on the property? That's one of the reasons that Richard Engen Associates was the architect that we approached, because that is kind of his specialty. And that's why he was the architect that we used in the past. So everything that he did was keeping in mind the historical registry and what we had to do that. So he has a full proposal specifically for them. Not that we won't have some hiccups, but he knows exactly what we need to do. And the costs that are in here are reflective of the way it would have to be built to be acceptable to them.
and then you're saying you're gonna privately fundraise some funds. Do you have a time frame? I mean, if it's
No.
gonna take you 5 years or 10 years?
No, but hopefully we will soon.
So you talk about the historical nature of the building that you would have to build in order to, you know, keep in line with Turner as it is right now. Do you know how much of the cost involved with the facility really is just to maintain that status versus what would it be to get the size of the building you want, so you could have the stands that you want to see the parents and the kids and keep the kids out of harm's way, and build the facility, but without necessarily it being a beautiful historical looking building. Newega right now is not a beautiful historical looking building. It's a
Absolutely not.
big shed.
Sure. So we could certainly talk about like a pole barn or something being a lot less expensive. However, Engen, when I asked him, say, what are we doing about this brick? Is there something we need to chip away at this cost? How can we get this cost lower? He said it is reasonable that you could get the cost a little bit lower if you did some sort of a facade or something like that, but he said it wouldn't be substantial. As far as on the inside, it's not. That's not anything that has to be historically matched to Turner. The biggest thing is about elevation and location on the property, meaning your visual from when you look at the front of the building and where the property sits. Does it disrupt what the building looked like originally? So there is some cost in brick, obviously, versus if we just put up a tin shed somewhere. But most of the Historical Society is more about that elevation and visual from the front of the building.
I don't know if it was in the proposal, but could you share how much you pay in lease or rent for the Newega building today, and what you guys are proposing to pay the city if the structure is built in a lease payment?
Well, I can tell you, we pay $2,000 a month for our rent right now.
Okay.
And we don't have a proposal for that. That's something that we thought that we could work with the city. You'll see that we have a budget there, and the margins on gymnastics are very, very tight. So we want to have we certainly wouldn't propose a rent that we think that would make us hard to operate. Like I said, we're proposing something we think that can be sustaining here, and I think with a little bit, with $15,000 a year as far as capital improvements going into that. So we're interested in talking about what that rent would be, but we do not have a proposed number. We're looking for some direction from the city on that. There has been a couple questions about the size of the structure and what would we do if since it hasn't been asked, I'll just address it. What would we do if you guys came to us and said, hey, we are interested in your project, but we do not have that kind of money? What can you do? Well, now what we're proposing here is certainly not the Cadillac of gymnastics facilities. However, if that happened, and I want to address it because I know it's on some of these your minds because you've come to me with it. If that happened, we would take out a level of that building. So instead of having 2 levels, we would have 1 level. We could do 4. I called Olson Architects yesterday out of Mankato for a second opinion on what we're doing because I had heard some feedback, and he said that if I was looking at a smaller building and I wanted to just keep it bare bones and simple and make sure we open the doors, we could do that for 1.6 if we could come in and do it simple enough at $120 a square foot. I am not encouraging that. I definitely think that the multi-level building is important. It gives the girls a weight room and locker rooms and places for them to grow. You know, but that is the alternative if the funding is not available.
Do you have a funding as far as equipment, or you're gonna combine the equipment and then a replacement?
We will be able to combine equipment. We are currently looking at getting a new floor. Well, our board has approved a new floor for our gym right now, and the floor is the major gymnastics expense. That's close to $40,000 for a floor. So we are looking at doing that already now. We've gotten a new set of bars recently. We have adequate beams. So to add both of our equipment together, I think that we're okay on equipment, because our current floor, although it's not in the best shape and it does need replaced, could be used as a secondary floor. So the space we're looking at would be large enough to accommodate 2 floors, but we would have that option already.
Do you envision, if a facility was built, that 100% of the use of that square footage or floor would be for gymnastics, or is there any time of the year that the equipment would be removed and it'd be available for other use?
Equipment is difficult to move. We move ours weekly, but we have a place to move it to. In a situation like this, we wouldn't necessarily have a place to move it to. I do see other things being used in that space. Anything that we can look at revenue-wise. Birthday parties are currently being done at Newagga, so that's a big part of that. You know, we're kind of keeping an eye on, like I said, those alternative gymnastics. What are people interested in? What do they want? CrossFit has become a new big thing. What do they want? Like, what are the extreme athletes looking for? And I assume that we were going to expand into that. We have Turner Hall. We have ladies coming in and doing some jazzercise type stuff every morning. You know, we're going to try to fill that space all day long with alternate gymnastics things. We also, there's a demand for the young kids during the day to do gymnastics, and currently we don't have that available at either place because we're kind of strapped by having all of our gymnastics teachers in 2 different places. So we would be having a full-time person. We can be doing some more daytime stuff.
And I think in terms of moving equipment, you know, I absolutely mirror what Virginia said, is that, you know, it's hard to move some of those things. Bars are hooked into the floor. And they can be moved, but it's difficult because there are those permanent structures that hook those to the floor. However, the floor space in a gym, each floor is 40 by 40 is regulation. So that would be a large enough space to do a lot of things on the floor. We've had cheerleading use Newagga's gym at times just for the floor space. So then we can also run gymnastics classes that are doing bars, vault, and beam, and then cheerleading can use the floor. So there are some other uses of that space that our new floor will be much more movable. Our current floor is just a disaster to move. You would not move that and reconstruct it. The new versions of floors are much more amenable to being moved to other locations. So that may be an option to move the floor if that space was needed for something else.
The demand for groups like cheerleading and dance is huge. We're always getting phone calls. We don't do it currently because of we're completely booked from 3 until it's till 9 o'clock. So we can't do that. But with that space, we'd be able to accommodate some of those dance groups in town.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee?
What is the difference in cost between what you're proposing and a pole barn?
You know that.
Right. We did a little bit of looking, not hugely seriously, just because we determined early on that Newagga could not do this on our own to build a new building. You know, I think looking at building a pole building, when we were looking at it, probably right around $1 million, because that included like purchase of land and development of parking and all of that sort of thing. So it depends highly on land purchase price and things like that. So we didn't have land, so that was going to need to be included in what we were looking at.
Okay.
And how hard have you pursued existing buildings? You know that there isn't any big enough?
We have not found any that have the ceiling space that we would need to have.
Like, for instance, the Armory is not large enough. You know, all those buildings that are becoming vacant, just they're not able to be converted into what we need.
And I should go back to your question about cost. You know, when I'm saying right around $1 million, that was also looking at a smaller space, because that was looking at just Newagga. That was not looking at a merger of the 2 programs. So the space we're looking at in this proposal of about 14,000 square feet, if we just did one level, that is larger than what we were looking at for our individual program.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee?
Well, we keep talking about the number 500, but my understanding is if this facility were built, there's opportunity to serve more gymnasts or other folks with different types of programs. Like you said, presently there's not a boys gymnastics, so that is a possibility. So the program could grow if it had additional space. Is that correct?
Yeah, both programs could grow right now without even adding boys. Our highest attended program this year is 240, and we do that multiple times a year. So there's obviously overlap, but if you multiply that by 2, we're almost at 500 on our own. And that doesn't count other people using our gym for other things. And then you add, that also does not include our competing team on top. That 240 is just our recreational girls. So I don't think it'd be unreasonable to think we're gonna serve well over 1,000 students in town throughout the year.
Thank you.
Well, thank you to the committee for questions. Going to look to the public and the audience that's assembled here. Again, same routine. I think most of you have been here throughout the night. Thank you again for your patience and engagement. Hopefully, if you come back, we'll get some air conditioning on. I'm getting a little warm up here. But if you'd come up to the microphone, anyone interested in sharing would need your name and address for the record, but would love to hear from you. Any comments or feedback for the committee?
It's too hot to speak.
I'm sweaty back there.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Doug Hughes. I'm the team coach at Turner Hall Gymnastics. I've been teaching gymnastics for about 25 years. In Washington State, I coached for 10 years. I had multiple state champion teams, multiple state champions, girls that went on to college scholarships. I came here to town to move back to New Ulm, and I wanted to work at Turner Hall because that's where I remember as a kid doing gymnastics and having gymnastics. Because in my high school year, they cut out gymnastics at about my 10th grade in 1983. They cut out gymnastics. Anyhow, I wanted to still do gymnastics when I came back to this town because there was none at Turner Hall for team. And when I came here, I can't teach very much. Like, I want to be able to teach the girls. I haven't coached high-level gymnastics for 10 years because I just can't here. We don't have the pit where it's in-ground where the kids can learn flip safely. Special set of bars maybe that I can spot them easier on for safety. And since we only work out once a week, I don't like to teach high-level double back skills or big skills. It's not safe for the kids to do it once or twice a week. They need to do it consistently. So that's what we'd like to see with a bigger building and combine the two programs together where we can have a high-level gymnastics. For example, I had Maya's back there, Maya Cotton, some of you might know. When I came to this town, she was my first little dynamite that I picked out, a little kid in gymnastics. I went and I'm like, I want that kid right there. So she started, when I started all those years ago, 10 years ago, with the Dynamites program, she was my first one. And she went on, we work out once a week for 3 hours. We compete USAG, which is like the Junior Olympic program. This year is going to be a huge year this summer because the gymnastics, of course, for the Olympics, and the gymnastics team is probably going to win because they're way beyond the rest of the world right now. But anyhow, Maya working out 3 hours a week, she competes against girls that were 12 to 20 hours a week. And when I was finally actually coaching her a few years ago, she went to the state meet and won the state championship. And that was a big thing because a lot of coaches knew that we only work out 3 hours a week, that kid. And she beat all these kids that are some of them 20 hours a week or more. And they go to camps all over, so. Just imagine having a real program in this town like Turner Hall used to be back in the 70s when the men were #1 in the state and in the country. They had national members, Ted Marty obviously, with all that. But anyhow, it'd be nice to see, the program, if we had a building where we could actually do gymnastics again and have a nice high school feeder program for these kids. I think our town could actually be competitive in this sport also, not just the other sports. And I know this year Maya, she made it to state, first time in 9 years, I think somebody made it to state, and that's with hardly working out. So imagine what we could do if we could have a gym and really work out. This whole New Ulm could actually be on the map in Minnesota for gymnastics. Where'd they come from? It'd be awesome to see. Take a couple of years, but we have good coaches on both teams. Combine them together, it'd be amazing. So, not to mention, like she said, gymnastics is the foundation of all sports. All gymnasts, the most you know if you know gymnasts, they're good in every sport. Even if they don't go through gymnastics all the way through their whole career, if they start little preschoolers, they're usually going to go on somewhere else and be awesome at every other sport. So that's what gymnastics is important, not just gymnastics. It's for everything, so.
Okay. Thank you, Doug.
Yep, thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah.
My name is Gary Cook, and I'll keep to my 1 minute, I think. To me, what these young women have done is about excellence. I mean, that's really what this is all about. There's this iconic picture of Kurt Bell, Dr. Kurt Bell. You remember Doc Bell? Yep. He was a nationally award-winning gymnast. And there's a big picture of him down in Turner Hall. And he is standing there like almost a godlike figure with his gym tights on, getting ready to do his next exercise. When I see that, that's what I think of gymnastics. And that's what I think of the history of what Turner Hall has had. And that's what these two young ladies are asking the city to help achieve here again, that same kind of continuation of a tradition. This is an era of scarce resources. We all know that. There's lots of worthy projects that have come before you. But I would ask you to think about the fact, number one, we have been here for 150 years. We're still here. And as a board, we've committed ourselves to the gymnastic program. You've asked, sir, what are we going to do, you know, in the event that this project would be looked favorably on because the money isn't going to come right away. We will fight and scratch as hard as we can to keep as good a program going as we can, being able to tell people the city had belief in us, and we're going to be part of the revenue stream that's going to help make this an even better program. So that's what we would do. It's excellence in the sense, sir, that we didn't put a bunch of frills or fancy expenses for historical purposes in this. Really, most of that part is where you place the building so that it doesn't detract from the historical appearance of the main structure, the Turner Hall itself. There wasn't a bunch of money that went into doodads and things to make it look old and fancy like it was 1880s. It's more a question of placement, and there may have been a little extra cost for that, but not significant. But what we hope that you'll think about here is gymnastics being a sport that breeds excellence, that there's the tradition of excellence, that our organization is committed to this and has been for 150 years and are going to continue to be committed to it. And in this era of scarce resources, we're asking for the city's generosity to help build a building. But this is kind of the best of all sort of things I think about America, really. You've got an organization that's going to fund operating costs. You got a school that's going to kick in with the operating costs. You've got a board of directors and an organization that's helping with the operating costs. Sure, we're asking for help with the building. We're not asking the city to pay for an endless pit of expenses to run something. We're going to take the risk of running this thing ourselves. We're going to assume that responsibility and pay those costs just as this organization has for decades. So maybe I went a little more than a minute. I apologize for that, but we feel strongly about this, and we know that you'll give this project the serious consideration that we think it's due, and we'd ask for your favorable reflection on it and your support.
Thank you, Gary. Anyone else interested in sharing?
Coming up.
Come on up.
Come on up.
Everybody's got to have a little one.
Yeah, just pull the microphone down and share your name.
Kelly and Jenna Hodovic.
I just kind of want to keep building my skills, and I don't want to have to go to other facilities because I still like all of our equipment, and like not that it's safe and stuff, but I just want like higher level quality of like equipment.
Like a pit.
Yeah.
So currently in the summer, you know, Doug puts the girls together and we rent either Newega facility when they have time for us. It's very difficult to find time to even get into their facility here in New Ulm. So frequently we have to try and get into Mankato area gymnastics academy and stuff. And the girls love going there because they have a pit. So they are able to try those big skills, you know, that Doug said that they can't. I do want to say I'm a Turner girl myself. Virginia and I, our parents pooled resources together, and there's a group of us from Sleepy Eye that would come over to New Ulm once a week to do gymnastics. And so it's fun getting to see my child and her daughter and, you know,
Second generation, yeah.
the second generation coming to the gym here in New Ulm. And when Jenna, I really like the fact that there could be two floors going on at the same time, because one of the neat things with her and the Dynamite team, she was in Twisters, which was just a New Ulm program, and at Turner, and when she was 5 years old. There was a snow day or something, so they had a makeup day, and the only day we could do it was on a Wednesday, which is when the Dynamites compete. And so Sorry, she's hot. She's like, stop touching me. But anyways, so the Dynamites were competing while these little 5-year-old girls were doing their gymnastics class. And Jenna looked over at me and she said, I'm gonna tumble like those girls. And so that April, a few months later, there were tryouts. And she's like, well, can I try out for that team? And I didn't want her to get frustrated when she wouldn't make the team. And so I said, I don't know if you should try out. You should keep practicing, and then one day you can try out. And her dad said, no, I think it'll be good for her to try out, because then that way, when she doesn't make the team, it'll give her something to want to work towards. Well, she made the team. And she's been competing ever since, and she really loves the program.
And that is important to know, is that both teams would love to have the more advanced girls practicing at the same time as the little ones, because that's how you generate that love of gymnastics, by watching the big girls. That doesn't happen right now because the girls have to take turns in the building. So
yeah,
that's a great example.
And just a little bit to talk about the meets and stuff. They compete, all of the meets that we go to are in the cities, and so frequently we have to be there, 7 a.m. Is when their levels, and they have levels throughout the day. A lot of their meets are actually 2-day meets. And so we stay overnight in a hotel, and then, it's just a fun time. You have food concessions, you have all these people staying at hotels, you have people, t-shirt sales, just all sorts of different things. It's just a fun atmosphere. And I think with this initiative here, baseball, a lot of these other things, are drawing local people, or we're already drawing these people. Right now, we don't have these big meets that, a facility to hold these big meets. And so I think with something like this is a great opportunity to bring people into New Ulm.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Appreciate it. Anyone else? One more?
Hi, I promise I'll be very brief. My name is Andrea Bedker. I live at 21 North Payne Street. And I am asking for your consideration for the project, because one of the things that we have worked really hard with this project is making sure that it is meeting all of the needs that you guys are looking for as a committee. I feel that project does this, and I am encouraging you to look at ways that we can work together, think outside the box a little bit to make this happen. One of the things that I know that when my child asks me a question, or someone asks me a question, that I'm sometimes guilty of, is saying, oh, well, that's the way we've always done it. And one of the things that has been different with Turner Hall Gymnastics in the past couple of years is Taylor coming in. I think she's done a lot of great things for the program. I'm very impressed with the way that she has grown the program and brought new ideas to the table, such as having an open gym. And it's because of those open gym sessions that we noticed a couple weeks ago. How tall was the guy? About 7 foot tall?
Yeah.
Came in to pay us $4 for the open gym to do that kind of American Ninja Warrior type training.
Yeah, he told me that he'd been training in the wood chips outside and in different parks, and he heard about an open gym opportunity that we had at Turner Hall, and that's what had brought him in.
And I think that takes some courage for a guy of that size to come in. It just shows the dedication and commitment in the audience that could be out there for this type of additional athleticism and just kind of putting it in front of new people. I mean, there's really a lot of opportunity here that's outside of gymnastics, and I'm really hoping that we can all find a way to get some support for this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you, Taylor. Any final comments?
We got one back
The
in the
public?
meeting. Now
One
she's
more?
Now she's gonna come.
Okay.
I'm really bad at talking to people, so. My name is Deanna Giesecke. I live outside of town, so rural address. 39743 541st Avenue is my address. My daughter Emma is on the Turner team. Sorry, I get a little emotional. Don't put this on TV, okay?
A little late for that,
I
but
know.
keep going.
Sorry. Face the corner. No, one thing I've thought of, and maybe I missed it, but gymnastics builds a lot of confidence in kids. When my daughter started, she wouldn't talk to anybody. And being on this team, she gets out there, she flips around, and that's what gymnastics is, but she is out, she's talking, and they're right, it does build She would never joined any more sports. She's in track now. She does all these things at 11 years old. So I think that confidence is really good for the girls and something you can build for boys, and it helps them in their life. So.
All right, thank you, Diana.
Thank you.
Any final questions from the committee on the Turner Hall Newega proposal? If not, I want to again thank the proposers this evening. I think thorough presentations and great job answering all of the questions, and thank you to the public for the strong turnout and support for the various projects. Any other business this evening for our RENU committee?
Next meeting?
If
Next
not,
meeting?
our next meeting is, again, same place, same time, next Tuesday, May 3rd. And I expect we'll have the same turnout for the next meeting, so I hope to see you all there. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.